Hey everyone, welcome to today's lesson. This is Interactive English. For those of you who, if this is your first time here, my name is Wes, and the channel, it's all about helping you trying to practice your English skills, improve your English skills for those who would like to achieve English fluency. Now, today's lesson, I think, is a very useful one because it's talking about correcting mistakes. So that's what we're going to work on in today's lesson is we're going to work on finding your mistakes as well as trying to correct those mistakes. And I think many of you out there would like to do this because that's part of the process of working toward achieving English fluency. So you want to eliminate mistakes, especially if they're just simple ones. Now, before we jump into the lesson, I do want to tell you quickly and let you know that enrollment for our speaking class is coming down to the wire, which that's a great expression. Down to the wire means that it's getting ready. It's getting ready to end. So if you want to practice and improve speaking, then check out our speaking course. It is a 10-week course in which we will meet once a week for 50 minutes. And the course is on Zoom. So I will send you a link to the classroom. You'll click on the link. You'll go into the classroom and we will have class with me and some of your other classmates. And it's all about speaking. We're going to speak and talk about a variety of topics. We're going to look at a lot of different questions, and then you'll go into smaller groups to talk about those questions with your classmates and with me. So this is a class that's mostly for intermediate to advanced learners, and it's all about just trying to help you gain more confidence, overcome anxiety, help you improve vocabulary, listening, a little bit of everything. The course, it does, some of you have asked, it's $97 for this 10-week course. And right now, in the future, we're going to offer more class times. But right now, there are 4 different times. There are 2 classes on Thursdays and 2 classes on Fridays. Both are at 2 and 4 o'clock European time zone. So make sure you check to your time zone to see when the classes would be available. So if you're interested in if you're one of those people out there who's just like, I want more speaking practice, check out the course. I will leave a link down in the description if you want to check it out. I'll also throw one right here, boom, in the chat if you want to look at it. And if you have any questions, just send me an email at info@interactiveenglishvideos.com. So enough for the self promotion. Just wanted to let you know because it's coming down to the wire. Let's get back to our topic, which is finding and correcting your mistakes. So let's do a little bit of a warm up with this. I'm going to show you, these are mistakes on Twitter, and I want to just practice, see if you can identify the mistake, and we will correct these together. So this is on Twitter. People make mistakes all the time. I think people are just typing quickly. So, but it's a good way to try to practice this skill. So this one, have the courage to speak to me face to face, no fighting. Let's be adults and talk about it, or bury the hatchet. All right. What do you think is the mistake with this tweet? All right. There's one real big mistake that hopefully you can identify, and you know it's actually this is actually an idiom. An English idiom. So I hope that you are looking at that spelling, that Barry. That is the mistake. Bury the hatchet. This is really just the wrong word, the word choice. Instead of, or just a spelling mistake, Barry, to bury something, Bury. To bury the hatchet. And if you don't know what that means, to bury the hatchet, it's a great idiom. It means that you are going to stop fighting and you're going to make up and kind of forget about it. So if you're fighting with somebody, you're arguing about something, you disagree, you might say, let's bury the hatchet and let's move on. Let's forget about the disagreement. We'll bury the hatchet and we'll move on. So that is the first one. What about this next one right here? Um, what mistake do you see with this one? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you technically there's kind of two mistakes. Don't you wish your girlfriend was grammatically correct like me? All right. Do you, what mistakes do you see? I said there's two. There's definitely one, and I'll explain that in just a moment. Don't you wish your girlfriend was grammatically correct like me? All right, so there's definitely one mistake, and there is kind of another one. And I would say this because we're talking about writing. So the first one would be look at that your. All right, she uses the contraction instead of the possessive pronoun. So that's the first one. Would just be using the wrong word instead of you are your. Excellent. I see some of you got that. Don't you wish your girlfriend? And I said the other one is a mistake because it's like a hypothetical. In this case, you would use the subjunctive. Your girlfriend were grammatically correct like me. It'd be the same way if I said, he wishes he were taller. All right, you would use the subjunctive in that case. I said that it's kind of a mistake because, to be completely honest, people will they may not use the subjunctive. So in this case, you could cut her some slack, and you may hear people say and write girlfriend was, but because we're talking about writing, which is a little more formal, I would just try to follow the stricter rules and use the subjunctive. Your girlfriend were. The next one, what do you think? The Caesar salad. It's hard to read it because I want to read it correctly. The Caesar salad from McDonald's is so good. All right. I don't know if this is perhaps I don't know if they were trying to make a joke or if this is legitimately incorrect. But hopefully you can see that there is definitely a big mistake at the very beginning of the sentence. They've just used the wrong word. Yes, excellent. Lolly, you're right. So instead of seizure, which if you don't know what a seizure is, it's talking about a medical condition. But in this case, they don't want to say seizure. They want to say Caesar. The Caesar salad is a type of salad. The Caesar salad from McDonald's, or you could say at McDonald's, either one. McDonald's, it is a proper noun, so should have a capital M, capital D, is so good. And there should be a period at the end. But again, it's Twitter. People make mistakes all the time, but you guys caught some of these mistakes. Excellent. Let's do one last little warm up before we get into something that's a little more challenging. All right. So this person wrote, I smell like men's colon. All right. Well, I know what they wanted to write, but that's specifically the way you would pronounce it. I smell like men's colon. All right. There are several mistakes with this statement. See if you can identify the different ones. And there are, well, 1, 2, 3. 3 big mistakes that this person has made. If you're just, again, looking at the way it's written, if you're writing a sentence, the first word of a sentence should always be capitalized, capital I. And then, yes, if you get the other ones, men's, all right, it is a plural possessive, all right? MEN apostrophe S. I smell like men's cologne, not colon. That's very different. So cologne, I can understand why people might make this mistake because the spelling is very different than the pronunciation. But cologne would be what men might wear if they want to smell nice. So women would wear perfume, men would wear cologne. COLOGNE. I smell like men's cologne. And of course, there should be a period at the end there. So that's a little bit of a warm-up to see if you guys can try to just start identifying different mistakes. Now, this lesson is specifically about for you to identify your mistakes. And the way that I would suggest you go about it is to use writing. Um, because when you're listening and reading, that's when you're taking the language in and you are absorbing the language. When you are speaking and writing, you are using the language. That is your output. So I want you to try to use writing in order to identify some of your mistakes so that you know what you need to work on, what you need to practice, and what you need to correct. Because if you are making a mistake in writing, there's a good chance you are also, when you want to speak and you want to say something, there's a good chance that you may make those same mistakes when you're speaking if you're using the wrong preposition or you're using the wrong verb tense. You may make those same mistakes. But I want you to use writing for three main reasons, and we're going to practice this. The first one is that it's more reflective. And I say that it's reflective is because when you write something down, you can look at it. Speaking, you're not always going to remember exactly what you said. But when you write it down, you can look at it, you can think about it, and then you can reflect on it. So it is a more reflective practice, a form when you're writing. The other thing I would say is always reread. I think when I would teach writing, class, this is something you always tell people, and many people don't do it. I try to do this myself. Whenever I write to you in a comment and I answer your comment, I always try to reread. Even if it's a very short comment, I just like to get in that habit of always rereading. And even still, when you reread, this is when you're going to spot different mistakes. But even after you reread and you do it again and again, you may still make some mistakes. It happens, but you always want to reread. And the next thing that I would tell you is to look for one mistake at a time. This is something that I don't think people do. They would typically read something, and as they see a mistake, that's when they correct it, and then they're done. But I think if you want to make it reflective and really not just identify some of the mistakes you make, but really understand where you have a problem, that you are always making a mistake with prepositions. That's just an example. Look for one mistake at a time, and I want you to keep track of it. Because when I taught writing class, that is what we would do. So each day, the students would write something in their notebook. And then I would look at it, and I would mark that there was a mistake. I didn't tell them what it was, the mistake, and they would go back and they need to identify the mistake, and then they keep track of it. So for example, if there were 2 mistakes with articles, they used that incorrectly. In the first one, they'd write that, okay, 2 mistakes. And then for the next writing, maybe, they made 3 mistakes with articles. And then the next one, they made 3 more mistakes. After you write about 10 things, you can look at that list and you see that, okay, this is how many spelling mistakes I made. This is how many mistakes I made with prepositions. This is how many mistakes I made with verb tense. And you can see that, all right, I definitely made more mistakes with articles than anything else. And then you know that is what you need to focus on. So that's what I mean when I say try to identify one mistake at a time. And let's do that right now. So I'm going to show you a writing. There are many mistakes with this. I just want you to read it, and we're gonna do this. We're gonna take one mistake at a time. We're gonna make this a reflective practice, and we're gonna take one mistake at a time and correct it. And I want you guys to correct it with me and go through this. So here is the paragraph. All I want you to do right now is read it, and just at the very beginning, just tell me how many mistakes you find just reading it quickly, and how many mistakes you think there are in this one paragraph. And write that down. Tell me in the chat how many mistakes you have found in this paragraph. And then we're going to go through it and look for one at a time. So I'm just going to read this, and that's all I want you to do is just tell me how many mistakes do you think there are in this paragraph. So it says, today was my unlucky day. I must have woken up in the wrong side of the bed. First, I missed the bus, which meant I was late at work. My boss will be so angry. Then I spilled my Starbucks coffee. I had to give an important presentation with a brown giant Starbucks coffee stain on my pants. To add injury to insult, I stepped through some dog poop right after I leave work. I was so frustrating. I wanted to forget about the day, so I went to bed as soon as I got home. All right. So again, as some of you naturally you want to identify the mistake. First, just write down a number. All right. How many mistakes do you think there are total in this paragraph? And then we're just going to take one at a time and we're going to identify those mistakes and correct them. And then I'll show you how many there are in total for this one paragraph. All right. So somebody said maybe 3 mistakes. All right. That's the only, that's the only person. Eloise is 6. Okay. All right. Those are the only 2 that have answered me about that. How many mistakes total there are. So let's look at, we're going to do one thing at a time. And this is the list that we're going to follow. So the first thing we're going to do is just look at spelling and capitalization. Then we're going to look at verb tense, and then word order, prepositions, redundancies, and word choices. Those 5 things. And if you don't know what a redundancy is, it means when you say the same thing again and again, and you just say it too much. It could be just one word that you keep repeating. That is a redundancy. And a word choice is you've used the wrong word. So now I want you just to look at this again and tell me how many spelling and capitalization mistakes that you made. Just one thing at a time. If you see other mistakes, we'll come back to that. Don't worry about those. Just specifically look for spelling and capitalization. All right. How many mistakes can you find in this one paragraph that there's either a spelling mistake or there is a mistake with capitalization? And typically, like, you could add punctuation as well. In this case, it's not a punctuation. We're just looking at capitalization, those capital letters. All right. So when it comes to spelling and capitalization, I'm going to go ahead and tell you I believe there are 4 mistakes. No, I think there are 5 mistakes with spelling and capitalization alone, just those 5. So let me identify those for you, and hopefully you were able to see some of the same mistakes. All right, here they are. So the first one is I spilled my Starbucks coffee. The C in coffee. This is a common noun. It's not a proper noun. Starbucks is the name of a company. So you're going to capitalize the name of the company. Coffee, though, the name is not Starbucks coffee. Like, it's not the name of some special coffee that Starbucks has. So coffee in this case, it is a common noun. So there are actually 2 mistakes with that, because in both cases, I had a capital C before. It should be a lowercase c. The word important was misspelled. It should be spelled IMPORTANT. So that was a spelling mistake. The other spelling mistake was add. To add injury to insult, I spelled it AD, and add AD is like advertisement, or in British English, people would say advertisement. Add, ADD, is like something additional, something extra. So that was also a spelling mistake, ADD. And then finally, so, this is a compound sentence. So we do not need to capitalize the letter S in so. It should be a lowercase letter. So those are 5 mistakes right there with just spelling and capitalization. Now that we've corrected those, let's move on. I want you to look at verb tense. All right. How many mistakes do you see with verbs? Forget about the other mistakes. Just look at the verbs in each sentence. And this is what you do. This is the process that you can follow with your own writing. Because if you just reread and you look for just any mistake you see, you're going to probably miss some mistakes. But if you take something specific each time and look for that, and each time you reread it, you're looking for this one thing, that is the best way that you're going to identify the mistakes. So how many mistakes with verb tenses do you see? And I'll go ahead and tell you, typically the first sentence is what's going to set the tone for the story. Like you're telling a story. So really that first sentence is going to set the tone as to whether it is the past, the present, or the future. All right? So I hope that you, as you've been looking through this, I hope that you were able to spot some of these mistakes. And in total, there are 3 mistakes. So the very first sentence, I said, today was my unlucky day. All right? I'm talking about today, but I'm talking about it like it's in the past tense, like the day is already over. So we know that this story that I'm telling you is in the past tense. All right? So the first one is miss. All right? I use that in the present. It should be in the past. All right? M-I-S-S-E-D. It is a regular verb. The next mistake I said was my boss will be. All right? I use the future. That should have been probably an easier one to spot because the future just sounded a little awkward in this story. So my boss was so angry. We keep with the past. And same with that last part. I stepped through some dog poop right after I left work. All right? Left, we're using the past tense. So there were 3 mistakes with verb tenses. We just corrected those. Now let's look at the next part. All right? Word order. Looking at this paragraph, can you identify any words that they're in the wrong order? All right? So if you're just joining us, we are practicing, we are finding and correcting mistakes. So we've corrected several mistakes, and now I just want you to look at the word order. Do you see any mistakes with word order that you're like, okay, this needs to be switched? All right? I hope that if you're reading this and looking at it, I'm just going to tell you, there's 2. There are 2 different mistakes when it comes to word order. The first one is with adjective word order. So hopefully if you spotted 2 mistakes or even just one, these are the ones that we're talking about. So instead of a brown giant, all right, when you're talking about adjective word order, size is going to come before color, all right? I just bought a big blue car. I don't know. So you're going to put size before color. In this case, I gave an important presentation with a giant brown Starbucks coffee stain on my pants. Giant brown. The next one, word order, is just this expression. I don't know if you've heard this expression before, and this is a good way to build your vocabulary. To add insult to injury. When I was reading this, I said it correctly as I was reading it, and then I had to correct myself because it's just unnatural. So instead of saying to add injury to insult, the expression should be to add insult to injury. You should switch those words. And if you add insult to injury, it's an expression that means that you are making some situation worse. That something that's already bad, if it becomes worse, then you could say, well, it just added insult to injury. To add insult to injury is when something becomes worse. So this person already had a very bad day, and then they stepped in that poop, and it just added insult to injury. All right? So that is the phrase that you should be using right there, to add insult to injury. All right. Let's look at this next part right here. All right. All I want you to do now is look for prepositions. Do you see any mistake with prepositions? And there are several mistakes in which the wrong preposition is used. All right, so I just told you right there. There are several. And all right, so it says three. Okay. Uh, so there are several mistakes with prepositions, and those mistakes are as follows. We're just looking at prepositions right here. There are three mistakes. So you would say, again, there's another expression about people waking up on the wrong side of the bed. Not in the wrong side of the bed, on the wrong side of the bed. And then the next one was, first, I missed the bus, which meant that I was late. You wouldn't say you were late at work, but you could be late for work, or you could say that you were late to work. Either one of those prepositions is okay. I was late for work, or I was late to work. Either one works. And then finally, we just talked about adding insult to injury. To add insult to injury, I stepped in some dog poop. You would not really use through in that case. It kind of sounds a little awkward. When people step in poop, they're going to use the preposition in, and they would always say, oh, I just stepped in some poop, or watch out, don't step in that poop. You're going to use the preposition in. All right, now we're looking at the last part, which is we've corrected a lot of it. I want you to look for some redundancies and word choice. And remember, redundancy is when you're using a word too much. And this could be more a little bit like of an opinion. But if I'm just looking at this as a teacher, there are two corrections I would make with redundancies and one correction that I would make with a word choice. And they're just using the wrong word. All right. So the first redundancy, I think, is, let's just look through it. There's three mistakes. The first one is with Starbucks. You say that it's a Starbucks coffee. You don't need to say it again. There's no point in saying that the coffee is from Starbucks again, so I just get rid of it. And you'd say that you had to give an important presentation with a giant brown coffee stain on my pants. You could even maybe get rid of coffee too, because you've already said you spilled your coffee. People should know that the stain is from the coffee. But just to reiterate, you could use coffee. You don't need to use Starbucks again. The next one is so, because I've already used that as an adverb of degree when I said my boss was so angry. I don't need to say that I was so frustrated, because when people use words like that, so, very, really, those are some common words that people tend to overuse. So I think you can use it, but because we used it at the beginning, my boss was so angry, I'm going to change that in the next one. And instead of saying something like very or really, it's always good to use something that's more precise. And like I use the adverb incredibly. I was incredibly frustrated. And frustrated was the word choice. Instead, I said frustrating at the beginning, but we're talking about the way that someone feels. And that's when you use the ed adjective. I feel frustrated. If you're talking about some situation, that can be frustrating. So in that case, you'd say, I was incredibly frustrated. 3 mistakes, which means in total, all right, there were 16 mistakes in this paragraph. Now, if you were to reread it just one time, you probably would correct some of those mistakes. But when you go through it and actually look for one thing at a time, that is the best way to really be careful and identify as many mistakes as possible. And then, like I said, a way to practice that would be to go back and say, okay, how many mistakes did I make for each one? So for example, I think with this one, all right, spelling and capitalization, I made 5 mistakes. With verb tense, I made 3 mistakes. With word order, 2 mistakes. Prepositions, there were 3 mistakes. And then word choice there and redundancies, 3 mistakes. As you do this over time and you start making a list, that's going to help you understand, okay, my big problem is with prepositions and I really need to focus on that. Or my big problem is with verb tense. I keep using the wrong verb tense. That's what I need to focus on. So that is how you can make it more individual for you as to what you need to focus on. So use writing to help you identify and correct your mistakes because it is reflective. It is a great way to do that. And now I wanted to just do a few more corrections just for fun. Sometimes you guys write comments and sometimes people make mistakes. I want to look at some of those mistakes and correct them. I'm not going to write the person's name, but I just took a little bit. And again, this is a good way to try to identify mistakes. These are all comments that you guys had written at one point or another. So what do you think about that first one? My English is dramatically improved thanks to your channel. All right. In this comment, there are 2 mistakes with this sentence. Can you identify what those mistakes are? All right. I hope that you said that there's one with a verb tense and then one where there's just there's a letter missing. So the 2 mistakes, you would say my English has dramatically improved. Something has improved thanks to your channel. So you just need to add thanks to. Exactly. Excellent. So those were the 2 mistakes. What about this one? Somebody says, and I really appreciate this comment, you are a good and hard work teacher. Teach it. That last one, I think that was just a typo. Instead of teach it, I know they meant to say teacher. The T and the R are right next to each other on the keyboard, so that's just a typo. But what other mistake do you see? You are a good and hard work teach it. I know that should be teacher. But the other mistake, I think that if you're going to use the adjective is hardworking. So you are a good and hardworking teacher. Somebody is hardworking. That is the adjective. And that's just, it's a way of saying that this person works hard. And I really appreciate that. The next one, this was a question somebody wrote. And it's a question and they want to change it to the passive. Okay, what does your best friend drive? In the past, the passive voice. How would you change that to the passive? What does your best friend drive? And I'm going to change it for you, though. We've done lessons before on active and passive voice. Most of the time, you're going to use the active voice. There are some situations when you might want to use the passive voice, like if the subject is unknown or if you want to omit some information. In this case, it's not necessary, but just for fun, if you want to change it to the passive, what is driven? Driven, we're going to use the past participle of the verb. What is driven by your best friend, which is the subject? But you wouldn't want to write this. It sounds awkward. So in this case, you would always, I can't think of a situation in which you would rather use the passive. You just use the active and say, hey, what does your friend drive? Or what does your best friend drive? And you're talking about the car. But if you could change it grammatically to the passive, but it just sounds awkward, so I wouldn't recommend it. And finally, this is some question that somebody had wrote in the comment. I don't know if the question was for me or if the question was for other people who were in the comments. Ram lives the bus stand. What do you think? Are you going to use the preposition by or across? So I hope if you're just looking at that, then you know, yes, by would be the correct answer. Ram lives by the bus stand. Or if you're going to use across, it'd be across from the bus stand. Really depends on where Ram lives. So that was a quick little quiz with some of your comments, but I hope that this will give you some ideas about what you need to do if you want to try to correct your own mistakes. Use writing. It's a reflective process, use those steps that I talked to you about. Reread. And when you look for mistakes, just look for one thing at a time. Articles, prepositions, spelling, verb tense, and go through and see what you can identify. It's a good way to practice and improve on your own. And remember, it's coming down to the wire. If you want to join our speaking course, enrollment is going to end Tuesday. There is a link down in the description for that. And even if you can't join our speaking course, that's okay, but you want to show us some love, support what we do at Interactive English, you can become a sponsor, you can become a member. There are links down in the description for that as well. So I hope you guys found this useful. It's a good way to practice, and we were able to do this together. And yeah, I just hope you have a wonderful day. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you, Lolly, Sarah, Eloisa, Amitni, Mutan, Sleepwalker. Great to see so many familiar faces. Rosalinda, Miss Reluctant. Hope you guys enjoy, well, I was going to say enjoy the rest of your weekend, but it's about over. I hope you have a wonderful week. In the future, I think we've kind of gotten off schedule. I think I will go back to the normal schedule at some point of 2 new lessons out on Tuesday and then doing live lessons on Saturday. But as things change, I'll be sure to let you know. Thank you guys for joining me. Julie, Doni Urabek, sorry if I mispronounced names, Kareem, Devika. Hope you guys got some use out of the lesson. Fabiola. All right, I got to end this. Have a wonderful week. I will see you next time. So long.